I'm Scott Gray. I'm a writer for television, mostly for children's TV and mostly for animation. The first show I started on was Rugrats years ago. That was my first full-time job, and right now I'm freelancing for like Paw Patrol and Sesame Street and some other shows. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Brett. And I'm happy to be here on Breaking the Biz podcast.
Stay tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Greetings from Breaking the Biz, brought to you by Yes I Can Unity through Music and Education. I'm William Felber, your navigator through the intriguing universe of the entertainment industry, as revealed by the visionaries and creators who bring it to life. Stay tuned as we delve into diverse insights from the forefront of entertainment, hearing from pioneers, creators, and agents of change. Prepare for a journey filled with tales of innovation, resilience, and the undying quest for artistic brilliance.
Welcome to Breaking the Biz with the Yes I Can crew. We've got a great guest with us. We have Scott Gray, who is an Emmy and a Writers Guild award-winning writer. Scott Gray has written and developed television for over 2 decades as a head writer, staff writer, and freelancer on many, many shows that you guys have heard of. In addition, Scott has developed shows for numerous major studios, including Disney, Netflix, Nickelodeon, Sabian, Sesame Workshop, and DreamWorks. Scott has also written comic books, video games, YouTube series, and podcasts for many well-known properties, including SpongeBob SquarePants, Paw Patrol, The Backyardigans, The Fairly OddParents, Matchbox Cars, and The Muppets. In addition, Scott has worked with the pioneering company Backpack Healthcare to create a series of online apps to teach kids how important mental health is and the narrative of storytelling and cast of entertaining characters. Scott's sitcoms and screenplays have won several awards and festival honors. Scott has also performed both in improv and sketch comedy at the famous Improv Comedy Club. You kind of do it all, Scott. So what an amazing little bio there. A lot of hard work. I'm sure a lot of ups and downs. And I want to hear your career roadmap, how you got into all of those different opportunities. So let's start with when you were young, Scott. What was the when I grow up, my dream job I want to be?
I wanted to dig up dinosaur bones. I wanted to be a paleontologist to start with, or a geologist. So I've always loved that kind of stuff, but I always wrote too. I can remember in like third grade, I wrote a play about gangsters versus aliens, and I like forced my classmates to perform it. So I was a born writer, I guess. I won essay contests and I won spelling bees in grade school. I was that nerdy kid who always loved words and writing in English. And then, come college, I studied acting for 1 year, found out I wasn't the world's greatest actor. And then went into the sketch comedy club I went to Arizona State University, and they have a show called The Far Side, a sketch comedy show. It's been around over 40 years now. David Spade was briefly involved. So I did that. Every week we wrote and performed 30 minutes of original sketch material, and that's really where I cut my teeth and fell in love with making people laugh. And it was a great experience. And after that, I got an agent from a friend. Sorry, my dog is here and coughing up a hairball, apparently. So I got an agent, and then in Arizona, and then I ended up moving to LA a few years later. And my my agent's star client at the time was a staff writer on Rugrats. So he got my foot in the door at Rugrats to pitch, and I came in with like 40 ideas, like 41 sentence ideas, and they didn't take any of them. So they thought all 40 were terrible. but they're impressed with my gumption, so they were like, "All right, kid, we'll give you a shot." So that's how I got my foot in the door, in a nutshell.
Talk me through first of all getting an agent. You kind of said it like boom, got an agent. And I know people are you don't get an agent until you're ready for an agent. You don't get the manager until you really need the manager. So what was it in you that you knew, you mentioned a friend connected you in that angle to get the agent.
Yes, he was the best man at my wedding. I've known him since high school. He's still in the business. He's a writer and producer and showrunner himself, named Adam Beechin. He's done a lot of comic book writing and superhero writing and also television writing. So he got this agent first, and I, at that point, after college, I kind of knew I wanted to be a writer. I thought I was going to go straight to Saturday Night Live, actually. I was that naive. So, and I called up David Spade, who was on Saturday Night Live at the time and was not totally famous yet because sorry, my dog is loud. Um, but he had not become famous at Saturday Night Live yet, and he actually took my call. That's how bored he was. And I talked to him for like 20 minutes. He was super nice, but he essentially said, to be on Saturday Night Live, you have to either go to Harvard or you have to be a stand-up comic. And I was like, I'm neither of those, I'm out. But it was cool just to talk to him. And so I started writing sitcom specs, and spec scripts is what you need. Uh, sorry. Make sure my dog's not dying. All right. So I wrote some sitcom specs. I wrote one for an agency actually in New York. It was a separate literary agency. They were soliciting scripts for a sitcom idea they had. And they liked it enough to do a table read, which was really nice, awesome. So I was like, oh, wow, maybe I'm good at this. I think that was the first sitcom spec I wrote. And then I wrote a Seinfeld spec, this is dating me, and a Frasier spec. And spec scripts are just scripts for a show that's on air that aren't actually produced scripts. It's just they're used as samples. So those were the samples I had, and I also wrote a Pinky in the Brain, actually. If you remember that show, I see some of you. I love that show. I always loved that show. So I think that might have been the first spec I wrote, and I was doing audio visual work at the time. I was a geek at resorts, like setting up slide projectors in Scottsdale, Arizona, and showing videos, taking video footage of businessmen squirting each other with squirt guns. And I wrote it backstage in my spare time, just sitting back there as I was running slides and stuff. So that's what got me my agent, and I got an into the agent because my good friend was already with her, and he got me my foot in the door. And she liked my samples. I will say she was in upstate New York, so it wasn't like getting a high-powered Hollywood agent. It was easier than that. Those are very hard to get and still are. But she was kind of smaller and like a boutique agency. She's still around. Her name's Sue Giordano, and she's with the Hudson Agency. And she's great, actually. Sue has got some good clients still, and I'm still in touch with her. So that helped that it was a smaller agency and it wasn't like a high-powered top Hollywood type place, which is very hard to get into. So yeah, she read my stuff and just started submitting me to places, and it was kind of that easy with her. So.
I love it. And just so I'm on the same page, David Spade was part of the improv group in Arizona at one point. Um, is that how you decided to get a hold, like more or less, hey, we went to the same school, is that how you got through? Because I just think that's a great example of how networking should be. Reaching out to people who go to the same school or are in the same circle. It's very important to put yourself out there.
Exactly. Yeah. I never met him. He was a couple years before me in the comedy club, and he wasn't like a regular, but he showed up enough that people claim that he was in it, So, but yeah, when I called, I said, I think I did say, tell him that my name is Scott Gray and that I was a member of the Far Side, like him. And he took my call. So, yeah.
I love it. So you get an agent, you get your first opportunity. What comes next?
Um, I wrote the script. It was the first script credit I had was Rugrats. Like I had sold some ideas to Disney, and the person at Disney who loved me because of my Pinky and the Brain script, actually, my spec. And I'm still in touch with him a little too. His name is Jim Bates, and he was an exec at Disney, and he had me pitch for it was the 101 Dalmatians TV show, and a show called Jungle Cubs, which were both like Disney spin-off shows of films, obviously like the Jungle Books TV spin-off and the 101 Dalmatians TV spin-off. And it was a unique situation because 101 Dalmatians was at the end of its run on television and they were desperate for ideas. They had a big staff, but they weren't cracking ideas. Disney is notoriously picky on taking ideas. It can be really hard to get a premise through there, for better or worse. So I was just this young writer with no credits, and they were desperate. So they took a call from me, and I was like, oh, "I've got some story ideas," you know. And, they ended up buying 4 of my story ideas, and which was kind of unprecedented for them. And the showrunner at the time thanked me profusely, and I was like, "Yay, maybe I'm good at this." I was so nervous. It was a pitch over the phone because I think they were based in New York, and I was in LA. Um, and then I got 4 ideas through on a Disney show, and they didn't let me write a single script. And that has not happened to me since. And I think the issue was that like they needed material, and like they had a bunch of staff writers they were paying who were, trying to get ideas through but couldn't. So, they kind of assigned my ideas to other people. And I was a young writer and unproven, so I get it. But it was very disappointing at the time. It was great to have a credit, but I didn't get to write the scripts. So I sold another idea to Jungle Cubs, and I think they gave that to a staff writer as well. But the first show that took a chance on me actually writing was Rugrats. And it was probably the #1 cartoon in the world at the time. This was like 97. I joined right after the Dill years, when Tommy's little brother was born, and right after the feature came out a couple years after that. And that was tricky too, because they liked my first script. Then I wrote a second script, and at one point after the first draft, the notes came back, and there were a lot of notes. And the showrunner at the time, who I like a lot and I'm good friends with still, she was like, "Hey, make sure this next draft is great because everybody's kind of on the fence still or whatever." It was. She didn't totally say that. It was in a very nice way, but I understood that like the pressure was on to make this draft really sing. And I think about this a lot. It was a key moment for me because sorry, my dog. I write what I write. It's not like I'm half-heartedly writing things sometimes. It's not like I'm trying to make things bad or good. Like I write what I write. So I do my best. And that's kind of going in. Like that could have been the end of my television career if I maybe tried too hard or did some stuff that wasn't me. But I was just like, this is who I am. I write the way I write, and I'm not going to do anything different. I'm just going to do my best. And thankfully, they liked that script for whatever reason. They didn't like the first draft, and that kind of continued my work at Rugrats. And I freelanced. This gives you an idea of how long it takes. I moved out to LA in '95. I sold my first Rugrats freelance script in '97, and they didn't staff me until the end of 2000. So it was a 5-year process to be full time on a show. And in that time, I was doing video editing. I came out here and did video editing for a doctor in the Hollywood Hills, Russian doctor who had raised chickens and is quite a character, about cancer. So I used to be editing videos on like breast cancer all day, and then at lunch I'd go down to Klasky Csupo in Hollywood because it was about 10 minutes away in Hollywood, and take notes on Rugrat scripts. So it was a fun time, but it took a while. So
I love how you displayed, you do whatever you have to do to pay the bills and still follow what you're passionate about and chasing that goal. And the fact that you have certain skill sets, there's nothing wrong with using different skills and doing whatever you need to do to continue and pursue and be resilient and not give up. So I love that. And it also shows not everyone is lucky enough in 2 years to even have that opportunity to, to sell a script. I've heard individuals who have, when they have ideas, maybe there's an idea similar and they pay you to shelf it. You've heard that stuff. Obviously it makes total sense where they've got all these people on their books to pay as writers, and it's not clicking. So I see where a company can do that, and I understand how frustrating it can be, but you knew you were on to something, and you had those skills. And I love the fact that the growth mindset, you believe in yourself, even with You're not going outside of your lane. This is how I write. This is my sense of humor. This is my vision. And if you like it, you like it. If not, I'm still going to stay true to myself, which I think is phenomenal, right? In the end, you got to be in it to win it. So I love that. So what comes next? You're now, you're doing Rugrats, and up to that point, freelance, which is a big part of the industry. We have many different listeners on here who want to go into different aspects of the business. But everyone needs to understand there's no skipping the line. You got to pay your dues. And you've got to come with lots of ideas. Some are going to stick, some are not. So just know that everything you put out there is not going to connect. But the more you know about the show, the more you can really if you can vision it, I imagine those higher ups can vision it as well. So I'm just curious, what comes next, Scott?
Lots of great points there, Brett. Yeah, thank you. I mean, with Rugrats, I researched a lot. I watched the show. I started out thinking this is a dumb baby show. I was like Angelica, and by the time I watched them, I was like, this is an awesome show. So yeah, you got to I put in lots of research when I pitch ideas. Like I read the show Bible several times, which is the document that lists the characters, the world, the tone, sample premise ideas. I watched tons of episodes, and that's how I generated those 40 ideas. A lot of them were similar to stuff they've already done, so that's why they didn't take them. But yeah, that's a big part of it is really kind of doing your research and putting in the time to immerse yourself in that world. And again, it took me 5 years to get a full-time job, and the job when I got it, I ended up story editing Rugrats, they're staff writers, which are kind of like the lowest writer on the totem pole. They're usually tasked with writing a certain number of scripts per year and not necessarily revising other people's work. Then you have a story editor who comes in and is essentially the person who revises other people's work. Will take scripts and rewrite them and make sure they conform to the voice of the show. And then above that, you have like a showrunner or a producer. So by the time Rugrats ended, I was story edited. I story edited the last season of the first iteration of Rugrats. There's the new reboot. But that, like, from the time I started to the time I ended was probably a year and a half. So even if you get a great job, it's not going to last a while in entertainment unless you're on The Simpsons, or one of these huge shows, but that's not the norm, unfortunately. So it is very much ups and downs. Like I've realized half my career has been spent as a freelancer at home, essentially. And I'm lucky I saw my kids grow up, but it is stressful. It takes an understanding of when you're working, you got to pack away that money. You got to even things out monetarily, and because there's going to be lean years. So, and again, it's nothing to do with like the talent of the person. It's just the nature of television, and very rarely do shows continually run for more than 2 or 3 years. And especially now with streamers and the low episode rate, a show will have 8 to 10 episodes a season sometimes when it used to be 26 or 52. So the landscape has changed a lot. And yeah, it's a rough time right now. I think maybe that, and like in animation and television in general, it's a rough time. And I know a lot of people who are falling back on their careers or shifting to other careers, and there's no shame in it. And I'm to the point where I'm looking around for additional income too, honestly, because that's the nature of the business right now. I have good friends leaving town who have created shows. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind in this business. Is it's not like a normal 9 to 5 job where you're going to have job security for 30 years in a row. It's like. And that's the good and the bad about it. So
I think that is a very important aspect. Obviously, we all know that animation, the industry, we'll get into AI and ideas going that way with writers and lots of different ways AI is being used and incorporated into this business. But I loved how you mentioned you don't always go from show to show. If you're lucky enough to get on a Family Guy, a Simpsons, or one of these shows that will be around, you're lucky if you get to stay working on that show. So when you're still working, if you're a freelancer and you have a short-term contract, like you mentioned, you got to put money aside. You have to be able to budget, but at the same time, you kind of need to be able to network to know what opportunity is going to come next. And that's why it's been echoed so many times when we have guest speakers on how important it is to be a positive person, someone really good to work with, someone who can collaborate, take constructive criticism, and deliver on timelines, because in the end, it's an ecosystem of everybody working together.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm always nice to people. I'm a nice person in general, I hope, but yeah. So I hardly ever yell or throw things at people. No, I don't ever. But you quickly learn, yeah, it's really about the people. You get to a point where you're like, I don't want to work on the show. You may not love the show, but you'll love the people, or you seek out jobs for the people that you enjoy working with. And I can trace my jobs like to a handful of people that have given me a career, really. So it really, once you're in and you do a good job and you're known as a good writer, it is like kind of who you follow around and your connections that you meet. Because the person that ended up as my boss on Rugrats, a guy named Rick Gittleson, he was kind of my mentor in the business. And I followed him around on several shows afterward, because, and that's how it works. And then through one of those shows, I story edited Lazy Town that Rick was show running. I met a guy named Adam Peltzman, who is a great friend now and has created Odd Squad, created Wally Kazam, was on Blue's Clues, and I worked for Adam for several years too. So, you end up just kind of making these connections that lead to other connections, and that's because you're a good person to work with, and they want to work with you more. Um, and then the interesting thing about kids TV at least is that often people that work for you, you will end up working for. Like you'll switch places. So this happens literally all the time. Like the junior writer on one of Adam's shows, Wally Kazam, is named Jim Nolan. And Jim was just like a writer's assistant. He wasn't writing at all. And I came in and was nice to him, which is hard because Jim's a terrible person. No, Jim, if you hear this, I'm kidding. But, so Jim now has created his own show for DreamWorks. He's a show creator, a showrunner, and is a big kind of name in the animation industry. And we've always just been good friends. And that started as how I treated him when he was my underling, theoretically. Like I don't see those distinctions. I see us as fellow writers trying to make a great show. So I really have never been about like status or who's who. Like a great idea can come from anywhere. Jim is a great writer. Like so yeah, it's very important to not be a jerk in general, but yeah, especially in like the TV biz, you end up working for the people who were your juniors a lot, and that's kind of what you want. You want the young kids coming up to create their own show and remember that guy that helped them out, or years ago. It happened on Rugrats too. There was the story, the assistant on Rugrats, ended up working for Nickelodeon live action and a lot of shows like that and creating their own shows. So it was a team of them. But yeah, pretty much every show I've worked on, like the writer's assistants or a junior writer has gone on to to run their own show, or create their own show. So
Another reason why you're good to everyone, because you never know who is going to be a boss, an associate. You never know. You want to keep those bridges solid so you can go back and forth. And it's very important to put your. The other thing I wanted to mention, Scott, is I'm sure it's great to work with you, but you're dependable, right? So when indeed someone takes a chance, they want to make sure that the team they're bringing is bringing their A game and everyone's going to be able to deliver. So I love that. You've worked on tons of really cool stuff. The SpongeBob, does that come right after Rugrats? Is there a lull period? Because I know you do comic book creating, video game. I mean, your writing touches a little bit of everything.
right, yeah, the SpongeBob was right around or after Rugrats. And I will say after Rugrats, real quick, just to get to the ups and downs, like I couldn't get a job for months, and I ended up being a courier for a few months before I got another full-time job. And that other freelance job I got was working for Nickelodeon Comics. I wrote like the comic adaptation of the Rugrats in Paris film. And then I was lucky when I started at Rugrats. A lot of the staff writers were busy on the show. So the showrunners at the time, a guy named John Cooksey and his wife at the time, Allie Marie Matheson, who were great. They were my mentors as well. But they had all kinds of ancillary projects coming in and no writers to do it, no staff writers. So I wrote a lot of the Rugrats video games. I co-wrote some with them. And just at that time, they happened to have like a national Rugrats comic strip. They're like, "Who wants to do a national comic strip?" I'm like, oh, twist my arm. I grew up on the Peanuts comic strips. I loved comics. I was a kid that had those little Snoopy books, I was reading in the backseat of the car on all the trips. So I've loved comics all my life. I'm a big Spider-Man guy. I still have like 5,000 comic books in my parents' house. Thankfully, I don't have them here. So yeah, they handed me the Rugrats comic strip, which I was the sole writer on for like a year, and they handed me a bunch of video games. And the video games led to other video games, and one of those happened to be a SpongeBob video game. And actually, SpongeBob was in some of the other video games too. They were Nicktoons video games, so there was like Rocket Power and Hey Arnold, SpongeBob, all in one game, and Rugrats. And I got to write a couple of those. And Tom Kenny, the guy who plays SpongeBob, is also in a show called Handy Manny that I worked on for several years. So I've had the privilege of meeting Tom in records, and he's just a great guy. He's a really fun guy. Everybody in kids TV and animation, like I have seen no egos. They're just really fun, down to earth people, which is really awesome. So
How important is it to celebrate other people's victories as long, and I guess where I'm going is sometimes people see competition, other writers, and you could be like, that person got this or that. But I've heard there's this positive energy when you support other people, that energy comes back to you in certain ways. Would you say that's true?
yeah, I've only backstabbed a few people on my way. No, um, no, I've never done that. I mean, especially in kids TV, it's really easy. Like, I have some friends who have written for network television and for like kids sitcoms, like live action sitcoms, and it sounds like a brutal world. I mean, we've all heard there's some scandals in those areas periodically. I've just heard some horror stories about long hours, people like you know, the atmosphere in those places is really set up to be cutthroat a lot, because they're looking for the best joke. We need a joke at 3 a.m. and who's got the best joke? And everybody wants to move up to be a staff writer or a producer. And it's very competitive. And that's the nature of it, sadly. Um, and I think some shows are not like that. Like I heard Everybody Loves Raymond was very familial and like Phil Rosenthal really let people out on time and really cared kept a family atmosphere. But for the most part, these primetime sitcoms are a bunch of like as many people as they can get chained in a room together until 3 a.m. trying to come up with jokes. So
Okay.
kids TV is kind of the exact opposite. It's really more of a family vibe. No one is competitive. We are actually, looking out for each other. I will always share jobs with people and vice versa. Like we're pretty open about jobs and even if we're competitive with each other, even if, like both of us would compete for that same job. Because I'm always like, do the right thing and the best person for the job will get it and just try to help each other out. And kids television is really very much like that. It's like we've all absorbed the lessons we've been writing to be nice and share and
I feel like the voices in the writing really do come out, like that the family and the moral lessons that come out of some of these shows. It's the good raising of the writers that get those stories out. So I love that. Uh, Talk me through winning an Emmy.
sure. It was surreal. I'm a neurotic writer, so I'm always overthinking things. Like I'm always like worried about something or other. I think people are prone to this in general. Like it's hard to find moments of pure joy, I guess, in life because there's always something else going on, something else to think about. But like winning the Emmy was total pure joy. Like for those, I fist pumped, and I never fist pump. I'm not a fist pumper. So I so yeah, and like the moments leading up to the name calling, in a good way, like it's a good problem to have, were some of the most nerve-wracking moments of my life. Like it was really so nerve-wracking to wait. And I've been nominated 5 times now, and I won that first time and not the last four. And it doesn't get any easier for some reason when they're about to call that name. It's like so nerve-wracking. But yeah, I was super fortunate. I won the Emmy for Rugrats. my first year on Rugrats, and the first year I was eligible. And the show had been nominated several times, and they ended up shifting it to the daytime Emmys, which was a factor. And the Emmys can be very political too, and they have all lots of rules. So I was lucky in the sense that they shifted categories. B, it was for the entire show. It wasn't for writing per se. And they ended up shifting the rules on how you win an Emmy a couple years later so that like even a staff writer couldn't win if it was just nominated for show. You had to be a producer level or above. So again, I was lucky and I was there at the right time. But that said, I am very proud of the work we did that season. And I'm proud of the show and I love the show. So on that level, I felt like we were doing good work and it was certainly deserved, but it's just, it becomes when you're up against four other great shows, it just becomes random to some degree. But it was interesting too because the show had been over for a year, so we were all kind of like sitting around at home looking for another job. Uh, and we got on stage and it's like, oh, hey, and so that was another interesting part. And the coolest part, one of the coolest parts was you walk off the stage, and when you actually get the Emmy, you walk into a room with tables full of Emmys on them. So it's like Emmy heaven. And you choose your own Emmy. You're just like, which Emmy do I want? And they don't have nameplates because, they don't know who's going to win. So you choose an Emmy and you get the blank base, and the nameplate comes, I think it was, I don't know, a month later in the mail, and they give you a special tool to open up the bottom of the Emmy. It's like a special Allen wrench. So that was a cool thing to have, like my Emmy wrench for a long time. And the other thing I'll say about the Emmy is it's very heavy. Mine is right here, actually. I'm looking at it, but they're heavier than you think, and there's a weight in them. Like when you open up the bottom, there's literally, I think, just a weight in there. So they cheat a little bit, but to make it feel impressive. But yeah, it was awesome. I'm very fortunate, and it did help my career. Like I think it continues to get me work, just to have that title. So.
100% winning one and being nominated, bottom line, multiple times just shows that you are doing solid work for sure. I want to ask you, unions, how important is it to join a union to protect yourself healthcare wise, mental health, all of the above?
Sure. Um, yeah, it's very important. I'm very pro-union. And it's not easy to get into unions, and it's becoming harder to some degree because there are always union shows and non-union shows. And one of the reasons animation is easier to break into, and pays less than live action. Animation pays about half the amount live action pays, or a third sometimes in general. And it's still really good money. Like live action pays a ridiculous amount, like primetime sitcoms. But one of the reasons is animation for years was not covered by unions mostly. There was always the Animation Guild, which I'm a member of, but certain shows are union and certain are not. And even some of the biggest shows ever, I want to say Barney was never union, even though it was live action. Live action shows generally would be WGA, Writers Guild. And a lot of popular shows are not union associated at all. Like when I worked at Nickelodeon, none of those shows were union. I think Nick at the time was not doing union stuff. Animation cannot be. Animation is just starting to make cross inroads to Writers Guild. Although those shows, primetime shows like the sitcoms and Family Guy, they did deals years ago. But for the most part, animation is not covered by WGA. There was just a landmark deal last year, which was part of the strike, where Sesame agreed to go WGA on shows, and some other companies agreed too. So animation is finally becoming something that the Writers Guild will cover. That said, there's still not the full-on live action deals where you get residuals, and it's not the same level, but it's great progress and it's super helpful because if nothing else, unions will give you health insurance and pension, like you were talking about. And that becomes the most important thing. Most people who are working 40-hour-a-week jobs for a regular company just get health insurance included, or they take out a little bit of their paycheck. Like as a freelancer in animation, you can be working 7 jobs sometimes at once and still not have insurance. So that's the crazy thing about the business. And right now it's still hard to get Animation Guild insurance. Like I would say less than half the shows are covered by Animation Guild. Um, but it's great when you have it. Like a lot of the Disney shows are it's kind of like on a studio by studio basis. So yeah, and for Tag, that's the main animation one. And IATSE, you have to have a certain amount of hours to get in, and then you pay like a certain fee. I want to say it was like 2 grand to join Tag, which is about half of what an animation script pays these days, a little less than half, in general. So you pay dues, and you pay dues every year. And to stay current, you have to write the equivalent of 2 11-minute episodes every year, which is really easy, honestly. Like Tag is great. For the Writers Guild, I've had both insurances, and I had them both at the same time for a handful of years, about 5 years ago. Both my insurances just ran out. I lost the Writers Guild about a year ago. I lost Tag 4 months ago. And I went from paying $50 a month for me and my kids. I'm divorced now, but I still cover my kids' health insurance. It was a great deal, $50 through Tag, to now I'm paying like $1,200 a month on non-union insurance for 3 people. Writers Guild, and I only paid $50 a month because I was covering my 2 kids too. It would have been zero. And same with the Writers Guild. Like the Writers Guild is great insurance too, and I paid $50 a month to cover my kids as well. So yeah, you, for just health insurance alone, unions are awesome. And then of course they raise the minimums of pay. I'm definitely a pro-union man. And then for the WGA though, what I was going to say, there's a threshold for income. So it keeps raising every year, like along with inflation. So I think the threshold to make Writers Guild insurance right now is like $40,000 a year on a Writers Guild show. Which if you're staffed is pretty easy. If you're freelance, I mean, that's the equivalent of yeah, eight episodes, maybe, 11 minutes, maybe 4 half hours. So it's a struggle.
Okay. I
Yeah.
want to ask you, you gave an example of when you were working at Rugrats and, they mentioned, hey, we need someone to step up, and who wants to be involved in writing the script, the comic strip. And you said yes. And up to that point, obviously loved comic books, the 500 Spider-Man. So at the parents' house, but I love, again, that's an example of the growth mindset of just taking on something. You don't necessarily have to have done it in the past, but just having faith within your own abilities, saying yes, and taking on something new. My question is give me another example of a time where you said yes and it led to other opportunities, positive or financial opportunities for you.
Sure. They reached out to me first. I should clarify on the Rugrats comic strip stuff. But like, had I said no, there would have been a million people who would have done it, I'm sure. So you're right in that I did somehow think I could do it. I loved the characters, and I've always loved the format of comic strips. So I think that's why I was somewhat confident. And honestly, was my most productive time as a writer because I cranked out, 360 scripts per se a year, 365. So, but another time would be just recently, and you mentioned this in my credits. Thank you for the intro. I worked for a company called Backpack Healthcare, and they sought me out online. Um, and it's a great woman named Hafiza Muhammad who her young son, I think he was 6 at the time, had thoughts of suicide. He had suicidal ideation. And she had been involved in healthcare and some of the insurance companies. And she ended up starting this company for low-income kids to educate them about kids' mental health. And it's apps you can play. They're playable games, but baked into them is education about mental health. And I ended up doing 14 modules with them about everything from ADHD to anxiety, to self-esteem. And we came up with separate story worlds for each app. Like building self-confidence is literally set in a construction world where you build a building. And so the analogy is there. The anxiety one, the analogy is that, it feels like you're underwater. So we set it at a pier, and it's like a pure amusement park where you play games and earn points. So that was something that I had never done before. And she sought me out through LinkedIn. I totally believe in the idea. I think it's super important. I've been lucky as I get farther along in my career that I've worked on some projects that I feel like are really making a difference too, which is what I love the most right now. And she they're very open as to making different worlds for each one. So I had no idea what to write though. They had one example, and the example was like 50 pages long. And I'd be asking them, another woman named Jenny Ryan was kind of Hafiz's first in command, and she's great too. And she's a working therapist. Both of them are working therapists, dealing with these things with actual kids every day. And I was like, Jenny, I don't understand how many games are in each episode. And she's like, it depends. And I was like, how do we work in this information? She's like, we do it different ways. And so and I thought, wow, this is really hard. But once I sat down and actually wrote one, it was like 40 pages, interactive games with a storyline through it. I was like, oh, I get it. You can't really describe it because it really is different. But at one point, that job terrified me because I didn't know what I was doing or if I could do it. And that's definitely a moment where I kind of stuck in there and said, I'll figure it out. And I did. And I was able to hire other writers. Um, and we kind of all figured it out together. And it's turned out great, I think. And they're coming out soon. So.
That's awesome. I love it. And it just shows, obviously entertainment, some really good family values in all of those shows, but mental health is a big one. So it's amazing that you can use your skill and put it to a really a great cause, like you mentioned. Let's talk about comedy, because it all started with some comedy and improv and acting. And in your bio, you mentioned being at the comedy club and performing. Do you still do stand up? Do you enjoy writing stand up?
I still write stand up, but I don't perform it. No one wants to see me perform anymore. So I've done stand up like 3 or 4 times. And it's brutal. Like stand up is the hardest thing, but it's also the most rewarding because it's all you. It's just you in front of an audience with just your thoughts. Um, Sorry, my dog is still hacking with a hairball. And he's a dog, ironically. Um, so yeah, like and I've done improv for years. After sketch, I did improv, which I love. And some of the people in my college comedy club, I'm going on a road trip with some people from my college comedy club just at the end of this month, actually. So the guy who used to run it lives in Portland, and I'm going up there with some other people to visit him. And yeah, I mean, I realized comedy was the way to go when I started out in acting. And acting is very serious. All the plays are about somebody's buried alive, and they're having incest with their, while they're buried alive, and they're going insane. And I'm like, so I was in acting. We did like Kabuki Shakespeare. We did the most obscure Shakespeare play, measure for measure possible. I was a comic relief, so I was Master Froth who came in and ran into some poles. But I remember my parents saw that. It was 3 hours long. It was Kabuki Shakespeare in like Japanese robes. And my parents were super supportive. My mom has passed, my dad is still around. But the best they could say about that play was, "Oh, that was very nice." So, even they couldn't find something because it's kind of a bummer, the play. And there's a famous play about a guy who talks to 52 empty chairs, and I'm like, by the end of that, I was just like, this is just too serious for me. And I remember at one point in acting class, one of the week's exercises was improv, and so it was very basic. It was like try to outdo the other person. And one of my friends, we were in an improv situation. He said, "Oh, it wasn't even that funny." He said, like, my foot hurts or something. And I said, "Oh, at least you have a foot," something like that. And it got this uproarious laughter from all my serious acting cohorts. So I was like, maybe I should focus on the comedy. And I got good notes whenever I did a comedy scene as opposed to a serious scene. And the one thing I tell this story a lot too. The one reason I know I'm good at a story editor, being a story editor, which is essentially, like I said, you take someone else's script, punch it up, make sure it's crisp and funny and tight. So it's literally editing, taking out stuff that isn't needed, tightening it up. I was never the world's greatest actor, but I did a scene with one of my colleagues from Tennessee Williams in the Glass Menagerie. And it was like a 20-minute scene, and it was like supposed to be a 10-minute scene. And I cut it. I just edited it. And I remember at the end of it, the teacher wasn't like, great acting, Scott. He was like, how did you cut that down? I didn't miss anything. So
There you go. You knew you had the skill there. I love it.
yeah.
What's the biggest piece of advice, Scott, you would give to a younger Scott getting into this business? Any and any major notes, things that change, or you know
Right. There's a couple things like work any connection you have, like don't be afraid to get out there and put yourself out there. It's a lot easier now in the digital age. So again, like even people you only loosely know or don't know at all. Like I've had people reach out to me cold on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to help someone try to get started in this business because you need that, you need someone to help you. I had a mentor, Rick Gilson, and someone who will read your writing, and that's the key, start with samples. You gotta have samples you believe in, samples that are good. It's not just good, great, honestly. And the way to do that is to write for a show you love or write something you love, like don't try to write something just because you think it's what you should write or you think someone else will write it. Write something that you truly love. Like my favorite shows at the time were Frasier and Seinfeld, and that's what I wrote. And Pinky and the Brain. And Pinky and the Brain, honestly, is the reason I have a career. So because I love that show so much, and that came across in my writing, and the guy Jim Bates at Disney was like, "You nailed Pinky and the Brain." Like I love that show too. So you find these touchstones with people, love what you love, don't try to change who you are. And then don't give up. Again, it took me 5 years to break into the business in a full-time job. So give yourself some time. 20 years later might be too much, but like give yourself some time. And again, like even then, like you can still write, no matter how far along you are. And what else? And I think that the other key is just you gotta love it, like I was always the guy that analyzed story that like I made fun of commercials from the time I can remember, like so I think, this business has several ups and downs, as we mentioned a couple times. It's really true. And the only way to get through it, is to love what you're doing, and to love the process. So and I don't know if there's a way to teach that, but like I was a fan of shows first. Like I'm sure many of you are. Like I was a TV kid. I grew up on TV. I was a latchkey kid. My mom had a job that kept her working till like 5. So I'd come home and I'd watch, I still almost remember the order. Right? It was like I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, Brady Bunch. Every single sitcom of the 50s, 60s, and 70s I watched. So I think it's important, and I think that really shaped me as a writer because I just got the rhythms kind of embedded in me and like all the Norman Lear stuff, All in the Family and all that. MASH, like I watched everything. Cheers. So and that was because I loved it, and that's really helpful too. So I think I think a lot of us start out as fans and then that's what helps get us excited about wanting to actually work in that industry. So
I love it. I love it. Let's go to some questions here. Bianca, I see your hand up. Go ahead and go first.
Hello, Mr. Gray. Good evening. How are you tonight? Thank you. I'm glad that Professor Brett got us connected. It's really cool to listening to you and your story and um the fact that you wrote for my childhood. Thank you for contributing to my childhood in some way. You mentioned you talked about Tom Kenny, who is the voice of SpongeBob, who I am blessed to um share birthdays with actually. And I met him. Um, and I think he's very sweet. You kind of alluded you kind of talked about answered my question somehow, but one of my career goals is to become a voice actress. And so when did you during your time on Rugrats and SpongeBob, did you work closely with the voice actors? And how, if at all, how was that experience like? And do you have any like advice for someone who has no experience at all, but really loves the like I'm a huge fan of the voiceover world. I love voiceover actors, I love the vibe, the environment. I just like the idea of voicing a character, like a cartoon character, and like being known and remembered for that in a way. So, like, do you like have any advice for me?
Sure. Yeah. Nice to meet you.
It's
Thank
meet
you for the
you.
question. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think voiceover is the best gig in the business because you roll out of bed, you wear sweats, you show up for an hour, you get a union rate. And, they're all brilliant people too. I'm friends with Cheryl Chase, who plays Angelica in Rugrats, so I'm in touch with her off and on. She's great. All the Rugrats, all of the Rugrats were women. All of the main characters. Chucky was Christine Cavanaugh to start with. And Tommy is E.G.
E.G.
Daily.
Daily,
Yeah, yeah.
Susie is Chris, someone who I love.
Yep.
We could talk. Oh, if we can.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, to answer your yes, I was at several voiceover sessions with all of them.
Oh my God.
I don't know if they'd remember me, but yeah, I went to records a lot, and they were just honestly, it's the most fun voiceover show I've worked on. Handy Manny comes a close second, but because you had all those people in the same room, and we had guest stars too. We had like Debbie Reynolds sometimes, and like huge guest stars on Rugrats, and it was like watching 4 or 5 stand-up comics going at the same time. The booth at Rugrats, it was just you just sit there and laugh, and they're all amazing people, very down to earth, and very like very just artistic and they care about the process. So yeah, I loved the voiceovers on that show. It was a highlight of my career. And Handy Manny also, that was where I met Tom Kenny. Fred Stoller was on that. I don't know if you know Fred, but he's been on several shows as a guest star. He was Raymond's brother on Everybody Loves Raymond. There was a stellar cast on that too. And yeah, it's the most fun is to see your script come to life. Like that is the best part of writing, honestly, is when the voiceover people get it and bring it to life, and often they make it better. So, my ex-wife actually started out, she wanted to do voiceover, and she had a little experience. So, I mean, it's kind of like writing. You got to have a sample. You make a demo reel, and then just kind of network. And I know, agencies are involved in voiceover stuff too, but they don't have to be. So I feel like it's kind of the same steps, just get a demo of your voices. And nowadays you can just post this online. It's easier in some ways. And then target the shows you like, target the actors or actresses you like the most, try to reach out to them, even on LinkedIn. You never know. Um, so yeah, I think that's the main points I would make. So
Perfect. Great question, Bianca. I'm going to go to, let me see, hands. Let's go with Presley, an aspiring writer.
Hi, Scott. I just want to ask you a question. You just mentioned about you editing videos, which is, I think it's pretty impressive because, not only I am an aspiring screenwriter, but I'm also an aspiring filmmaker, new coming filmmaker, and an editor. And, I'm just wondering, what type of editing software do you use? Do you use like Premiere Pro, Final Cut, or Avid?
good question. Nice to meet you. And yeah, I've used all those. I got out of it about 20 years ago. That's when I started full-time writing, or 25 even. But at the time I was working for the Doctor in the Hollywood Hills, and we worked on a Media 100, which was kind of like it was a non-linear, it was essentially an Avid. But I worked in Premiere for him as well. And I've done Final Cut. I did a short film and I edited it myself on Final Cut. So I love all those. And I think editing is a natural pathway to writing because editing is essentially story. You're picking the best takes, you're arranging them in the best way. So, I think that's halfway to story writing, honestly. And then one of the writers I've worked for named Holly Huckins, actually I know several people who are editors who became full-time writers. But she worked with, God, it was Scorsese, I want to say. She was an assistant editor. So yeah.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
Great question. I'm going to go to Aiden. Go ahead and ask your question. You're on mute, Aiden.
Okay. Hopefully everything's good.
Yep, you're good.
And coming in clear. Okay. I guess my main question is, In terms of formulating a story, because I'm really big into like storyboards and I would say a little bit into comic making, I would say what gets you going in terms of like creating a story? Could it be like random inspiration? Can it be based on like a word, or how do you go about like formulating your ideas?
Right. I just bang my head on the computer a lot until no, it's a process. Like usually I will study if it's an existing show, if it's a show that's already on the air, I will study the Bible,
Mhm.
which is a document that lists the characters and the world and the other episode ideas. I read over the previously made episode ideas a lot. You can even get scientific and figure out categories, like in Rugrats, sometimes it'd be like the babies misunderstand a word, and that gives you an episode. Or the babies go somewhere and they think it's something different than what it actually is, like a car wash. So I think if it's an existing show, study the show a lot and just try to, make it a part of your thought process. For original ideas, just go with what you love the most, honestly, and just write what you want to write. It's the only time you'll have to do it, to write your own stuff. And then I've done this a few times if I'm desperate for an idea, and I read this as a technique. You just flip through a magazine and look at pictures, get out of your own head and see. You might see a picture of a mountain. And again, for Rugrats, you'd be like, oh, the babies become mountain climbers. So sometimes you can do very serendipitous things like that too, and they'll work. So it's a gamut. It's like ideas can come from anywhere, and they're the hardest thing to get is a good idea that will last a whole episode, that will sustain 11 minutes of an episode. So yeah, do whatever you can.
Love
Gotcha.
it.
Thank you very
Great,
much.
great
Yeah.
little nugget of information there. Devin, go ahead and unmute, ask your question. I think you're still muted.
I am so sorry. I thought I
You're good.
unmuted
You're good. Go
myself,
for it.
but hi, Mrs. Scott. But just like Bianca, I am a aspiring voice actor myself, and I also grew up with Handy Mandy and SpongeBob, and I've even watched Pinky and the Brain. I'm a TV guy, big TV guy. I've watched a lot. Two questions. With SpongeBob, like, which kind of seasons did you do like some of your writing, or did you like do a few episodes? And like, second off, I just how does like the I'm trying to find the word for it, the agencies, the guilds work? Because as an actor, I'd never thought, but I felt like it might be more complicated. I mean, to the best of your knowledge, if it is.
Sure, sure. SpongeBob, I only wrote the video games, so I didn't work on the show proper. But I know people who have. But yeah, the video games were fun because I wrote full stories for the video games. And as far as like agencies for voiceover acting, is that what you're?
I think it was like guilds. That
Guilds.
guilds, that was the word I was looking
Yes,
for.
yes. The guilds, yeah. So it's AFTRA, I think a lot of it. SAG-AFTRA, so it's the same as the Actors Guild. And yeah, the unions are super helpful in voiceover work too. And again, there are some jobs are not union and some jobs are. Um, I'm not sure entirely of the rules for SAG. I believe it's you have to record a certain amount of material or just be hired on a show. And again, it's tricky because you can't get hired on a SAG show until you're SAG, or if they want to hire a new person, they've got to justify that you're the only person who can do the job, if I'm remembering right. So it's tricky to get in, like most of the unions, but again, I'm very pro-union, and the key, like I said, is just kind of coming in with a great demo, and then people will want to use you. So
Perfect.
Okay.
Great question. Noah, go ahead, unmute real quickly. One question, because we'll try to get through the gamut real fast.
How are you dealing with the contraction in the animation industry and how they're barely greenlighting anything? And were you considering like writing for YouTube independent stuff, like Zipped Up or 6 to 11-year-old shows for YouTube, or Glitches Productions, maybe work on some web series for if needed?
yes, great question and very timely. Yeah, there is a definite depression. It's the worst it's been in 40 years, I think, in the business, and I've heard that from several other people. And I've written on a couple YouTube things. I wrote some YouTube things for Sesame Street that were shorts. I've written a toy company in New Jersey had me do some shorts on YouTube for them. So yes, I'm definitely trying to branch out as much as I can. I'm doing podcasts. I've been doing those for a few years. But yeah, the landscape is definitely changing, and it's, as you said, like nobody's doing original stuff anymore. It's got to be farmed from YouTube. That's the main way shows are happening now. And that's not
Like
necessarily bad.
I've heard that
Let,
there's
let,
something
let
called
Scott answer the question. No, let Scott answer. Go for it. Sorry, Scott.
Oh, sure. No, no, no worries. Yeah. And you can follow up after I think I was pretty much done, but you kind of nailed it. It's a rough time right now, and I'm shifting to more short form stuff. The problem from my perspective is the short form stuff doesn't pay as much because it's shorter and it's not union. Network shows like Handy Manny, like Rugrats, both, well, one was Disney, one was Nickelodeon. They pay a certain rate because they're network, but now like YouTube and podcasts pay about half that. So that's the problem for me. But yeah.
Can I ask a question, Brett? I have to
Yeah,
go.
go for it, Josh. Go ahead. Ask your question.
What advice do you have for someone who's wanting to consider writing in the voiceover as well, in like animation as well as voiceover?
Um, for someone who wants to become a writer or
Yeah.
an artist or, um, I mean, for writing, I would just say like it takes, sorry, my dog just like got tuberculosis tonight. Hope you can't hear him too much. But yeah, writing, the most important thing is to have great samples. The good thing about writing is if you can get a script in someone's hand and they love your script, that's all you need. It's not like acting where you have to show your face and it's like what's on the page should be what gets you the meeting. So and of course the other stuff helps. You want to be good in a room, you want to be a nice person, but it comes down to great writing. So I would suggest, and I had this, was like write two great episodes, great samples. People like originals as much as specs, if not more now. So, and I won Scriptapalooza. I forgot to mention this. Like, God, 20 years ago, won Scriptapalooza with a Malcolm in the Middle spec. And I got to meet Steve Levitan, who's the guy who created Modern Family. But again, that was cold, and that was just a submission to a festival. So festivals are great options too. So,
All right. Thank you.
Perfect.
Sure.
Great question. Daniel, real quickly, go ahead, ask your question. Then I'm going to come to Danny. That'll be our last question. Go for it, Daniel.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. Since you worked on the Nicktoon games, what's the one that you liked the most that you worked on?
the game that I like the most?
Yeah. Since you say you work on the Nicktoon games.
Sure, sure. The Nicktoons were fun, like, and I did one with a microphone that you spoke into and sang along with songs. That was fun, but honestly, the one that was the most fun was probably the very first game I worked on, which was a Rugrats game, which I think ended up being called The Search for Reptar. But I hear a lot from people who were scarred by the game. They're like, that game terrified me. But they remember it, and they're like, that was so fun, but it was so weird. And I co-wrote that with the Rugrats showrunners, but. That honestly might be my biggest legacy I hear the most is like how fun that game was. So that's nice to hear. So I'd have to go with that as my favorite. So
Perfect. Okay. And last question of the night. Danny, go for it.
Hello there. How you doing? So I guess maybe my question was already answered, but what SpongeBob games did you actually write for, and what was it like working on that series?
uh God, the one was the Nicktoons. It was Nicktoons, Tunes, and it came with a microphone, and I wrote songs for SpongeBob. One was like a racing game. I don't remember the names, honestly.
Hmm.
Sorry. It's like 20 years
Like
ago. But one was I
like
think a racing game.
I know a couple like Battle from Bikini Bottom or Creature from the Krusty Krab.
No, I don't think there was a full-on one that was devoted exclusively to SpongeBob, but it was part of the
Oh,
Nicktoons umbrella stuff where SpongeBob, Rocket Power, all that kind of stuff. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
I just wanted to know like what was it like to write for Nickelodeon games then? Like what was I mean, I guess that question's already been asked, but like
Working on a legendary franchise. How rewarding.
Yeah, I mean it's awesome. That's the short answer. And everybody was a joy to work with. I never met a single bad person in the video game world either. Like they were just all it was a fun atmosphere. And one of the highlights of my career was the first time I had a video game in stores. and it was the Rugrats Mystery Adventures, where Tommy's like a detective. And I have a picture of me in like a Walmart holding up one of the CD boxes, like all all awestruck. So yeah, oh, and I will say that the fun part about the video games, it's different than scripts because they're about 100 pages, like those scripts. Like a normal 11-minute episode is anywhere from 12 pages to 18 pages. Because of all the gameplay dialogue, like those scripts could go on forever. And so some of the it was fun in the records where the actors would get a little giddy because they've been there so long and then just like start improving. And, it's hard to think of a ton of ways to say, pick that thing up or go left, go right. So you just have them riff, and sometimes, and it'd just be hilarious, the stuff they come up with. So.
Okay. Perfect. Scott, I want to thank you. I know we went a little over on time. I want to thank you for what, Noah? Did you have a quick question?
No, didn't I already connect with you in LinkedIn?
You might have. You can
because I tried to connect.
If you want to connect, you most definitely can reach out to Scott via LinkedIn.
Yes.
But I'm gonna go to closing real quick, Noah. So if you can just mute, thank you, Scott. I wanna thank you for joining us tonight. Absolutely, extremely valuable. So enjoyable to kind of hear your career and the ups and the downs, and you just being really transparent on being a gig economy, how hard you have to have grit, you have to have be able to take constructive criticism, you have to be able to step outside of your comfort zone to find success. You've echoed all of it. So I just want to thank you once again for your time with us tonight. I want to wish you continued success, good health, and we're putting down the feelers right now for the next Emmy. I know it's coming your way. So just continue telling great stories and doing the good work you're doing with mental health. Just thank you again.
Sure. Well, thank you for asking me, Brett, and it's an honor to be on the podcast. And thank you. Great meeting everybody.
As we conclude another enriching episode, we hope you found inspiration in the stories shared today. Let's take a moment to honor Yes I Can's role in bringing Breaking the Biz to life. Yes I Can's commitment to empowering young people with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship shines brightly, paving paths of opportunity and dialogue. This podcast celebrates the organization's dedication to nurturing talent and facilitating impactful discussions. Breaking the Biz is more than a podcast. It's a part of Yes I Can's broader mission to amplify voices, dismantle barriers, and craft a world that's more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Each episode is a chapter in our shared narrative of progress, education, and empowerment, driven by the spirit of Yes I Can. Thank you for spending your time with us on Breaking the Biz. Continue to challenge the status quo and share stories that resonate. Until our paths cross again, let's keep transforming aspirations into achievements and infuse every endeavor with optimism. Here's to advancing the landscape of the entertainment industry, one episode at a time. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.